Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. Welcome to the first Formula One live commentary stream of 2018. Welcome to the live coverage of the 2018 Bahrain Grand Prix. I do apologize for my indolence in not streaming Australia. Logistically, it's the middle of the night here on the east coast of the United States, therefore it didn't quite work out for me to be shouting at the top of my lungs in a quiet and filled house. However, here we are for round 2 of the 2018 Formula One World Championship, Bahrain. Bahrain happening somewhat earlier in the calendar than we are used to in recent years. Of course, Bahrain was the season opener in 2006 as well as in 2010 due to scheduling conflicts in Australia. However, the Australian Grand Prix beginning this season. Sebastian Vettel and Ferrari took an inspired and decisive victory in the opening round of the championship after a very opportunistic move under the virtual safety car, which Mercedes very promptly blamed on a software error. However, here in Bahrain, we have a very different story. The starting grid reads as follows. In pole position, we have car number 5, the Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel. P2, car number 7, the Ferrari of Kimi Räikkönen. Front row lockout for Ferrari, their first of the season, a very dominant performance in qualifying. P3, car number 77 of Valtteri Bottas in the second Mercedes. Where is Lewis Hamilton? Well, arguably he should be up there at the front. However, unscheduled gearbox change means that Lewis Hamilton will line up in P9 today. P4, car number 3 of Daniel Ricciardo in the first of the Red Bulls, and P5, Pierre Gasly of France driving for Toro Rosso. This is definitely the surprise of the weekend, I must say, thus far. Gasly up there in P5 in the Honda-powered Toro Rosso. P6, the Haas car of Kevin Magnussen, car number 20. P7, Nico Hülkenberg in the first of the Renaults. P8, nice qualifying effort by Esteban Ocon of Force India, and P9, there is the aforementioned Lewis Hamilton taking a 5-place grid penalty for that gearbox change. P10, Carlos Sainz in the second Renault. Nice decent effort by him. Brendan Hartley in P11 in the next Toro Rosso. P12 for Sergio Perez in the second Force India, and P13 Fernando Alonso in the McLaren Renault. McLaren, an absolutely mystifying lack of pace here by that team. P14, Alonso's teammate Stoffel Vandoorne in the second McLaren. P15, Max Verstappen, eliminated, technically speaking, in Q2. However, he had a mystifying crash at the end of Q1 out of Turn 2. The car got away from him as he was turning into Turn 2. Verstappen blamed it on a sudden power surge from that Renault power unit in the back of the Red Bull telemetry. That's what it says. However, a lot of people are saying Verstappen's making excuses for being a little bit too over-exuberant. We shall see how he gets on in the race. P16, the Haas car of Romain Grosjean. More problems for the Frenchman coming off of a double retirement for Haas in Australia, cross-threaded wheel nuts in both of their pit stops on sequential laps. P17, the Sauber of Marcus Ericsson. P18, the Williams of Sergei Sirotkin. P19, Charles Leclerc in the second Sauber. And P20 and last, Lance Stroll for Williams. I'd like to extend greetings to everybody who is joining us so far today. Jonathan Straitman, hello. Yana, hello. SimRacing604, good morning, Mike. Gonzalo Rodriguez, good morning. Or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I should also say that I am in the distinguished position of being the only American in 2018 to offer live Formula One commentary. U.S. television coverage has suffered tremendously in 2018. NBCSN lost their exclusive broadcast rights to Formula One. Therefore, ESPN are covering it right now terrestrially in the United States on ESPN2. They are basically broadcasting simulcast Sky Sports coverage. We're watching Martin Brundle on the grid right now. I do appreciate being able to see Martin Brundle's grid walks. However, it is a very sad day indeed for the American Formula One fan not having a dedicated channel or dedicated commentary team for Grand Prix racing. Cosi Micre, welcome from Puerto Rico. How is everybody doing over there? I know it's been hard times in the last few months following the hurricanes that have hit the island. We're trying our best to get help to you. And now the national anthem of Bahrain. Anyway, Martin Brundle, what is my opinion of him? Well, I do think Martin Brundle is probably the best racing driver never to win a Grand Prix. And I have to say that throughout his racing career, he was always a very eloquent person in interviews, and he's definitely been a great broadcaster as well. I think really what he offers to television is he has a lot of first-person, first-hand experience in what it's like to drive a race car and what it's like to drive a Formula One car, and he is still somewhat active. Every once in a while you see him in an endurance race or two, and of course he is still doing demo runs in Formula One cars, now for Sky Sports, but he did so many great features over the years for ITV and later BBC. Really, he's a very unique personality. He's a great broadcaster, and he's a pretty great driver as well. Remember, Martin Brundle, a Le Mans winner and a World Sports Car champion as well, so his Grand Prix career doesn't really do him justice in terms of his abilities. SimRacing604, how was New York? Well, I've been going to the New York Auto Show for a long time now, and it's always a pretty cool event. You get a good sense of where the industry is and where it wants to go, and sometimes you see things there that completely wreck your sense of what you think a car should be when you see some of the concept cars, and more often than not, they actually make it to production. I remember years ago I was there and I saw the concept of the Toyota FJ Cruiser. I don't know if they sold that in Canada or they sold that anywhere else in the world, but it was basically, it was a modern take on the old Toyota FJ, which was basically a Japanese Jeep, and it was a great little thing in the 70s and 80s. It went away. They brought it back in the form of the FJ Cruiser. They made it for a few years. I don't know if they still make it, but I saw that as a concept and I said, no way will they put that in production, and they did. A few years later, I saw the Nissan Murano Cabriolet concept, and I thought it was the most ridiculous thing in the universe. No way would they make that, I said, and yeah, they sold it. They actually sold quite a few of them. Wasn't very popular when it was in production. Nissan got rid of it, and now it's actually somewhat desirable, even though it is very slow, very heavy, and quite ugly. But there it is. Definitely some surprises always at the auto show. Always great atmosphere. Lots of people there always, so definitely a well-attended event, and you get to see some pretty cool cars, both modern ones and some classic ones as well. Got to see my first Lamborghini Miura in the flesh there, as well as Mario Andretti's 1994 Lola, the Indy car. Very, very cool to see that as well. Yeah, Andy, check your connection, check, I don't know, check to see what your processor is doing, because I'm listening to the stream myself and it's smooth on my end. Gonzalo asking a good question. Nowadays, with all the racetracks in Formula One, a lot of them are not good. The spectator side of things is getting a lot better in terms of the TV coverage and some more interactive content, but the racetracks are not the best, and I definitely agree with that sentiment. The ones that I would bring back onto the calendar Imola, Manicourt, for sure. What else should we bring back? We need to reconstruct the old Hockenheim and bring that one back. If there would be a way to do it, it would be fantastic to get F1 on the Nürburgring Nordschleife. I don't really think it's possible, just the way that circuit is, and it's just cut into the mountainside. They're not going to be able to make any real configuration changes to it, but that would be fantastic. What other circuits should we bring back? There have definitely been a lot of them that have come and go over the years. Istanbul needs to come back. That was the best modern circuit ever. Honestly, I don't think anything's been built in the last 20-25 years that comes even close to what Istanbul has been. There has been some crazy talk of reconfiguring Monaco. Now, it's all pie in the sky at the moment, but somebody did bring it up. I think it was actually His Serene Highness Prince Albert II who brought that up. Now, Monaco is the second smallest country in the world. It's only about 2 square miles in total area, and the roads that Formula One uses for the racetrack are the roads that go through Monte Carlo. So you really can't do anything in terms of where the roads are. They are what they are. But Monaco also, quite a bit of the country has actually expanded due to land reclamation in and around the harbor. And apparently Monaco is undertaking another reclamation project around where the Poitiers corner is going into the tunnel. And they're going to be extending that shoreline out into the ocean a little bit. And there's talk that they might be able to extend the circuit in that direction. Now, they'd have to reclaim quite a bit of land to do that, because I'd also assume that they would want to create more roadways or perhaps parking areas, things like that. Could they just sort of tack that into the present circuit configuration? Basically maintain everything that's already there, but add a little bit before going into the tunnel? It's possible, but that all remains to be seen. Estoril is also a very good circuit. I would really like to see it come back in the configuration they used in the 80s and early 90s. That's essentially perfect. Other configurations that need to return, Catalunya needs to go back to what it was pre-2007. You could do one of two things. You can maintain the current line through La Caixa, or you can extend it back to what it was in the 90s and early 2000s, but you've got to get rid of that chicane in Sector 3. It completely spoils the entire circuit. Jonathan, is that true? Dunsfold Aerodrome is going away? Dunsfold is where Top Gear was filmed? They're going to build houses on it? Come on. Just coming down to about 5 minutes before the start of the formation lap. Formula One, they are staggering the start times of the races this year. They've extended it a little bit, they say, in the name of making TV coverage a little bit smoother. But honestly, I think it just adds a little bit of dead time. Under the former rules, the race would have been underway just about now. The formation lap would have started right on the hour, and then the lights would go out about 3-4 minutes later, depending on how long the formation lap took. But here we are waiting until 10 past the hour. Sim Racing 604, here we go. Juicy questions coming in. What are your thoughts on Ferrari threatening to leave F1? Are they whiny babies or justified? I've been saying for the last few months that Ferrari need to build a chassis for Indy. Maybe just the Indy 500, but Ferrari need to build a chassis for Indy. Not buy a Dallara and race it as a factory car. They need to build one. Maybe they won't compete in IndyCar ever, but they need to build one. They need to show the world that, yeah, we can broaden our horizons, and there's another series out there that is quick enough, and we think it has enough prestige for the Ferrari name. They did that in the 80s. Believe it or not, Ferrari built a car for what was then the kart championship, basically the precursor to the modern IndyCar series. This was during the split in United States open wheel racing. You had kart, and then you had the Indy Racing League. Similar rules, similar cars, but different organizations. And Ferrari built a car for that series in the mid-80s. Ferrari could well do that again. They are justifiably not happy with the direction Formula One is going, and I think a lot of fan sentiment this year do echo what Ferrari are saying. Ferrari, of course, the oldest team in the sport. They are, of course, the most well-endowed as well. We can go into how the FIA distributes prize money, certainly not equitable. However, Ferrari, they do have a lot of political clout, and they're not happy. Liberty Media still don't seem to understand that. They have their strategy in mind in terms of what they want to do with Formula One, and we're seeing the products of it right now. But Ferrari, well, they've not been a beneficiary of this, and certainly the jury is out. Ferrari, they can basically do whatever they want. They've been successful in the last couple of years of Formula One, so they're certainly not acting like sore losers, because they're not losers. They're fighting for the championship. They did so last year, and so far they've won the only race of this year. So I think Ferrari are in a very strong position to leverage whatever it is they want to leverage. Will they actually do something? That's the million-dollar question. The closest they came to leaving Formula One was, again, back in the 80s when they built that chassis for kart. I don't think they're exploring any other options at this time. Every couple of years we hear rumblings that maybe they want to build an LMP1 entry, or maybe they want to build an Indy entry, but I think that maybe behind the scenes they are working on something, whether it's a revamped package for Formula One in terms of how everything looks and how everything feels and is operated, or are they looking at moving into another series? I'm not privy to that information, unfortunately, but if I were running Ferrari, I would be building a chassis for Indy and then just sort of parading it around the world and seeing what people thought. Gonzalo asking a question: what's the biggest challenge for any racer, professional or not, sim racer or real life? Money. Full stop. That is the one thing that everybody wants and everybody needs: money. There are many talented people out there. However, most of them never get the chance to drive a race car, much less be sponsored to drive a race car. That's really the biggest challenge out there. It's money. It's exposure. It's proving yourself in machinery that's representative of what your talents are, and then it's getting people to notice you and to back you. Definitely not an easy thing. However, the 20 men on the grid here in Bahrain have certainly been well represented and well sponsored throughout their careers. They are all in their cars, the engines are running, the mechanics are just pulling the tire warmers off of the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton right now. They will all run off the grid in mere seconds, and then the formation lap will get underway. Standing by for the start of the formation lap. The grid is clear. We have one red light up. We're waiting for the light to go out and the green flag to be displayed, waiting for the clock to tick to 10 past the hour. It is 10 past the hour, and the formation lap is underway. Good getaway on the formation lap for both Vettel and Raikkonen. The Ferraris 1 and 2 leading the field here in Bahrain. And now, a Formula One tradition, all of the support staff who were just on the grid supporting their respective cars will now run across the racetrack and run back to take their positions in the pit lane. They still can't figure out a better way to do that. I would say it should be a Ferrari win today. Obviously 1-2 on the grid. Vettel and Raikkonen, both very good drivers. Vettel in pole position. Will we see Ferrari team tactics playing already at this early stage in the season? I think Kimi Raikkonen could well win this race today. He has been in every Bahrain Grand Prix since we started coming here in 2004. Certainly well experienced at this place. Then again, so is Sebastian Vettel. Will Ferrari start to support Vettel preemptively in the championship fight? Again, it is only round 2 of 2018. However, team orders could well happen. Vettel and Raikkonen just coming through the end of Sector 3 and coming back onto the start-finish straight to take their grid positions. Briefly on board there with Max Verstappen, languishing all the way back down in 15th following his crash at the end of Q1 yesterday. Sebastian and Kimi now beginning their burnout sequences, preparing for the race start. Vettel just completing his last burnout and finding his grid position. P1 for car number 5. Kimi coming up behind him now. Vettel is stopped in position. Raikkonen now stopped in position. We'll wait for the rest of the field to form up behind them, and then the all-too-familiar start sequence awaits. Last 3 rows of the grid now coming into position. Live feed showing the Haas mechanics there, looking on with some trepidation following their double retirement in Australia. However, will their fortunes turn presently? We will find out in just a moment. The medical car is in position at the back of the field. Lance Stroll is in position. The green flag is up. Stand by for the lights here in Bahrain. 3 lights, 4, 5, pause. The lights are out, and we are away for the 2018 Bahrain Grand Prix. Vettel and Raikkonen getting good getaways in formation there. Valtteri Bottas there challenging Kimi Raikkonen for P2. Will he make it through turn 1? Yes, Valtteri Bottas ahead by a nose of Kimi Raikkonen into turn 1. The order now Vettel, Bottas, Raikkonen, Ricciardo into P4 at this point. We'll wait and see if there were any incidents at the back. I do not believe so. Turn 4, Sebastian Vettel leads Valtteri Bottas away. We have some gaggling there in the mid-pack. We have a Force India turned around in turn 4. We have to see who that was. I do believe it was Sergio Perez. He's now classified in P20. Quick spin and recovery for the Mexican. He is underway again. We'll see if he makes it into the pit lane. There could well be some damage on that Force India chassis. Coming down through the end of Sector 1, your order is Vettel, Bottas, Raikkonen, Ricciardo, Gasly, Magnussen, Ocon, Hülkenberg, Hamilton, and Alonso, your top 10. Yes, Fernando Alonso already up into P10. It looks like we have a Sauber ahead of one of the Williams cars, still waiting for timing and scoring to finish shaking out here. It's always a little bit twitchy, shall we say, on the first lap. However, I do believe that was the Sauber of Charles Leclerc. Moving up through the field a little bit. Marcus Ericsson in P14. Lance Stroll up to P15 from starting last. Good start for the young Canadian. And now coming down to finish the first lap of 57 here in Bahrain. The order is Vettel, Bottas, Raikkonen, Ricciardo, Gasly, Magnussen, Ocon, Hülkenberg, Alonso now in P9, Verstappen, your last points runner in P10. Good start also by Max Verstappen, who is now challenging Lewis Hamilton into turn 1. They are wheel to wheel through turn 1. They make contact. Hamilton and Verstappen make contact through turns 1 and 2. Verstappen now ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton using party mode on that Mercedes to overtake the Red Bull. And one of the Toro Rossos has now overtaken Max Verstappen as well. Verstappen seems to have a puncture. Verstappen going backwards in a hurry. He's sawing at the wheel. It looks like he has a right rear puncture. Yes, puncture confirmed for Verstappen. It is a left rear puncture. And Daniel Ricciardo is stopped. Daniel Ricciardo is stopped. I can't quite see where it is. There is smoke coming forth from the rear end of that Red Bull. He is stopped someplace in Sector 1. Yes, he is stopped right there through Turn 6, I believe it is, just coming through the infield section at the end of Sector 1. Virtual safety car deployed for Daniel Ricciardo. Again, that Red Bull is smoking a little bit. Not quite sure what happened to the Australian. Verstappen should be able to continue once he gets that tire off there. He is just crawling back to the pits. He's trying to keep the tire from delaminating too much, but it has already completely deflated, and it is just moving around on the rim. In replay here at the World Feed, Verstappen on Hamilton. Where do they touch? Verstappen forces Hamilton very wide off the circuit. There is a bit of contact between Hamilton's right front and Verstappen's left rear, and that is quite enough to induce a puncture right there from the external replay. Yep, there it was. It was square on contact between the left rear of Verstappen and the right front of Lewis Hamilton. It was just enough probably to bend the outer surface of Verstappen's wheel a little bit, and that just deflated the tire. Verstappen limping back home in Sector 3 now. There does not appear to be any other damage on the car aside from the puncture. Just being very careful now, trying not to do any more damage. The danger is, if you get that rubber flailing around as the tire starts to delaminate, that can rip the floor apart. It can even rip the rear wing off in some cases we've seen over the years. However, Verstappen quite cautiously bringing it back into the pit lane now at a very reduced pace. Red Bull are prepared to receive him. Meanwhile, Daniel Ricciardo being shuttled back to the pits on a motorcycle. His day is done. Under the virtual safety car, the field is neutralized, both in speed as well as in the relative positions that were there at the time of the VSC deployment. The drivers are given a delta time on their steering wheels that they are not allowed to exceed. In other words, they're given split times on their steering wheels, and it shows them plus or minus, and whatever the fractions of the second are. They are not allowed to exceed that delta time. Therefore, the field is neutralized in terms of overtaking as well as in the relative gaps to each car. We're not sure what happened to Daniel Ricciardo at this time. The car just stopped on the outside of Turn 6. Replay of Max Verstappen. There was the contact with Sergio Perez there. It was Perez and Brendan Hartley, I believe, who got together. Perez punted into the air a little bit. He spun and continued. Unsure of any damage to Brendan Hartley. Charles Leclerc has also visited the pit lane. He's gone on to medium tires. He could well be good to go until the end of the race. The word from race control, the virtual safety car will be stubbed down momentarily. We will resume racing. Ricciardo's car has been cleared. VSC has been stubbed down. Green flag is out. DRS re-enabled in the DRS zones. Pierre Gasly and Kevin Magnussen going for it. They make contact out of Sector 2. Both men continue. No damage evident on either car. Working lap 4 of 57. Your order is Vettel, Bottas, Raikkonen, Gasly in P4, Magnussen in P5. And now, as I say that, timing and scoring now classifies Magnussen ahead of Gasly, and then they flip them around again. Do we have a last name versus last name problem? We shall see. Lots of sparks streaming off of the cars as they pound down into turn 1. Lewis Hamilton is leading that pack. That is Hamilton, Hülkenberg, Alonso, Ocon, and Hartley there going for the same piece of real estate in turn 1. They do not make contact. Fernando Alonso fighting there with Nico Hülkenberg into turn 3. Hülkenberg takes the inside line and maintains his position. Romain Grosjean fighting with Lance Stroll. The Haas now trying to outdrag the Williams as they head into the infield. Haas has the inside line and should take the position, and indeed it does. Romain Grosjean now classified P13 ahead of Lance Stroll in P14. Stoffel Van Dorn trying to get in on the action there ahead of Lance Stroll, and he has overtaken Stroll. Max Verstappen now being shown off the racetrack and stopped. I cannot quite discern where he is yet. That is Sector 3. Down the infield straight, Sector 3. Max Verstappen has stopped. We'll see if we get another virtual safety car. Right now it's covered under local yellow. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso has made his way up into P8. He's coming into the yellow flag zone in Sector 3. Verstappen is climbing out of the car. Verstappen is officially out of this race. Again, Sector 3 just covered under local yellows at this time. No safety car or virtual safety car. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel, with that local yellow, resets fastest lap of the race. 1:35.721. He's the only driver in the 135s at this time. Green flag in Sector 3. Track is clear. Lewis Hamilton, just taking a look at him as he's going through Sector 1, there appears to be a little bit of damage on the right front of that Mercedes. We didn't get a close enough shot really to see. Perhaps it was a shadow. However, that Mercedes does not look 100% healthy. Following that contact with Max Verstappen, I would not be surprised if there is some damage there on Hamilton's car. On board with Hamilton, I'm just seeing halo, so I really can't see any of the front suspension or any of the right side of the front wing. We'll have to see if there is any damage to Lewis Hamilton. It doesn't seem to be impeding him too much. He is running in P5 at the moment. He's got a gap of 1.7 seconds behind him to Kevin Magnussen, so he is holding P5. Yes, keep your eyes out on Lewis Hamilton's car. We got another shot of the nose, and something does not look quite right on Hamilton's right front. Sebastian Vettel resetting fastest lap there, 1:35.369. Meanwhile, Perez and Hartley under investigation for that lap 1 collision. Replay of the start here from Sky. Bottas just got a better start than Kimi Räikkönen. Perhaps that Mercedes party mode giving them a little bit extra horsepower off the line. Bottas just drove past Kimi Räikkönen. Räikkönen didn't even try to fight him for the position. He knew that he lost the drag race. They seem to have fairly equal reaction times from the lights. Mercedes just had more horsepower than Ferrari there. However, Bottas didn't seem to gain all that much on Sebastian Vettel off the start. The replays following turn 1 here. Nobody really got together through turn 1. They waited until turn 4. Replay on board with Räikkönen. Gets a good launch. Second phase of the start, he bogged down a little bit in that second phase of the clutch release, and perhaps that was the differential between he and Bottas into turn 1. The situation at the front has now stabilized. Sebastian Vettel leads Valtteri Bottas by 2.499 seconds across the line there. Kimi Räikkönen a further 2.6 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. Lewis Hamilton, meanwhile, is now up to P4, having passed Pierre Gasly. Perhaps Räikkönen and Hamilton will have a little bit of a tete-a-tete here in a couple of laps' time. Of course, if Hamilton manages to overtake Räikkönen, we can fully expect Valtteri Bottas to slow down and then cede P2 to Lewis Hamilton. So Hamilton by no means is out of this race yet. On board again with the man of the hour, Fernando Alonso. He's currently running in P8. He definitely is very good at these starts. It's been one of his defining characteristics throughout all of his Formula One career. He makes these absolutely no-holds-barred starting efforts, and he really capitalizes on them. Double retirement for Red Bull. That's about as horrible days come in this sport. I'm really interested to see what happened to Daniel Ricciardo. The car just stopped. I didn't see any apparent damage externally on it, just a little bit of smoke coming from the rear end. I couldn't quite see if it was coming out of the breather there, as these cars do tend to smoke a little bit this year, or if there was some sort of internal component there getting a bit too hot, but we shall hear a little bit later, I am sure. Turn 1 incident involving cars 33 and 44 noted, according to race control. No further action will be taken. Battery issues noted for Nico Hülkenberg. He does seem to be missing a little bit of power out of the corners. We'll see if that issue continues to plague him throughout the race. Battery issues are very general terms. It's difficult to tell exactly what that problem is. Is he having a problem with the regen? Is he having a problem with the deploy? Is the battery simply getting too hot? We will see. However, if these cars do lose that ERS power, they are effectively down by almost 200 horsepower relative to the rest of the field, so they will go backwards in a hurry without that hybrid assist. We have a penalty coming down from race control to Brendan Hartley. A 10-second penalty is going to be applied at his pit stop if he so chooses to serve it then, or it will be added to his total time at the end of the race. At the end of lap 10 of 57, the order is unchanged at the front. We have Vettel leading Bottas, leading Räikkönen. P4 now for Lewis Hamilton, P5 for Pierre Gasly, 6th for Kevin Magnussen, 7th Nico Hülkenberg with a stricken Renault, P8 for Fernando Alonso, P9 Esteban Ocon, and P10 Brendan Hartley, who we just talked about having that 10-second penalty added to his time. 11th for Carlos Sainz, 12th for Ericsson, 13th Van Dorn, 14th Grosjean, 15th Stroll, 16th Sirotkin, 17th Leclerc, 18th Perez, and he is your last car running. Out of the race thus far, Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo, both for Red Bull. Brendan Hartley definitely, he got the short end of the stick the first time he tried to make it into Formula One. He was completely passed over for Jean-Eric Vergne at the time, and Hartley made a name for himself in sports cars and in LMP1. Now, Jean-Eric Vergne, seeing the reverse situation occurring, Vergne recently came out saying that he was absolutely flabbergasted that Red Bull gave the call to Brendan Hartley rather than himself to come back and drive that Toro Rosso, but such is life, I suppose. Jean-Eric Vergne now racing in Formula E. We have a yellow flag now in Sector 2, waiting to see what the cause of that is. We do have some damage on the Williams of Lance Stroll. The left side of that wing has been knackered quite a bit. The end fence is just hanging on, throwing up some sparks at higher speed, and now it has come off as he's come over the curb. As I speak, Stroll dives into the pit lane. He is behind a McLaren. That is Stoffel van Dorn making a pit stop. See what tires Van Dorn has fitted. It looks like softs now going on to the Williams of Lance Stroll. They have a front wing standing by. Will they change the wing? It appears that they are. Yes, indeed, they have done a wing change for Lance Stroll. He has now been released back into the pit lane. Sim Racing 604, you're talking about that move in Australia that Ferrari and Sebastian Vettel did under the virtual safety car. The reason they got away with it was because the pit lane is not considered part of the racetrack, so it's not subject to that time delta under virtual safety car. So they figured that because the pit lane is somewhat shorter than the start-finish straight, they could go down the pit lane, technically cover less distance, and cover less distance at full speed, relative to the pit lane, of course. Therefore, they could gain some track position doing it, and that was enough for Vettel to come out ahead of Hamilton. It really was an inspired move. I would love to find out who actually made the call. It could well have been Vettel himself, who knows. However, he doesn't have nearly as much data as the pit wall has, but I'm sure a whole bunch of very smart people suddenly said, let's pull this trigger, and it won them the race. World Feed cameras have now picked up Sebastian Vettel once again. He's having a very quiet evening up there in P1. He's just coming through the end of Sector 1 now onto the infield straight at the start of Sector 2. I do like the darker paint this year on the Ferrari. It looks better on television. In recent years, the Ferraris, depending on the light, sometimes they look a little pink, but that darker paint definitely works. It reminds me of the F2007 and the livery they had on that car. I do also have to say that the halo is not nearly as intrusive in a visual sense when you're looking at the Ferrari as it is on a lot of the other cars. Painting it the same color as the bodywork does help it blend a little bit, although, of course, it is still very noticeable indeed. The gaps at the front are pretty stable at the moment. Valtteri Bottas is 3.2 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel. He is well out of DRS range, as is Kimi Räikkönen relative to Valtteri Bottas. Almost 3 seconds exactly, the gap between those two gentlemen. Lewis Hamilton, 8 seconds behind Kimi Räikkönen. Does not appear that he's in a position to make a charge. World Feed showing a replay of the start from Lewis Hamilton's perspective. He absolutely rocketed off the line, made up 2 positions right from the word go, being somewhat cautious into turn 1. Just driving straight down the middle, staying out of trouble. Heads up driving by Hamilton, playing the long game. Kevin Magnussen cut turn 2 at the start, threw up a whole bunch of dust. Challenged Hülkenberg into turn 3. That was quite spectacular. And also what looks very spectacular is as the cars are coming down into turn 1, they are just throwing so much sparks up in the air off of the titanium and magnesium skid blocks fitted to the under tray. It looks really cool. Not quite sure it has any performance benefit, but it looks nice on television, I must say. Speaking of Lewis Hamilton, here he is, running all by himself in P4. The car looks okay. That damage that I thought I saw earlier on, it does not appear to have materialized. Just taking another look at the front end. I do believe it is a shadow. Indeed it is. Mercedes not painting the halo. I think that's a little bit of civil disobedience on their part. We all know that Toto Wolff would love to take a chainsaw to the thing, as would I, but in order to run in Formula One, you've got to run a halo, and I think they're trying to make it as ugly as possible, just to show everybody, hey, we don't like this thing. Kevin Magnussen in the pit lane. All right, Haas, get all your wheels on. If something doesn't look right, hold the car. It's still better than retirement. We got good signals from all of the wheelmen. Magnussen has been released. And he seems to be coming back up to speed. I would call that a successful pit stop from the Haas guys. Good job. Just watching Kevin Magnussen coming back up to speed here, there's a bit of fluid coming out of the back end of that Haas. I don't want to say that that's abnormal. This year, instead of recirculating some of the exhaust gas back into the combustion chamber on the engine, they're forced to vent it to atmosphere. So if there is a little bit of either unburned fuel or a little bit of oil coming through the piston rings there and making it to the combustion chamber, it just has to be vented straight out through the exhaust. So I don't want to say that's a problem on the Haas car, but it's definitely noticeable under these artificial lights. Some fluid or smoke or a combination of the two coming out of the back of Kevin Magnussen. Perez is under investigation. I have to see what that is. I believe that's still for the incident with Hartley. Meanwhile, McLaren in the pit lane. This is for Fernando Alonso. Let's watch this stop. Car comes in, stops on the marks, 4 wheels off, 4 wheels on, and released. 3.1 second stop for the McLaren boys. Getting official word regarding the incident between Perez and Hartley, that will be investigated after the race. Perez is under investigation apparently for a separate incident on the formation lap. I didn't quite catch that. Kevin Magnussen with a big lockup there, heading into the second sector, coming through the infield straight. Seems to have recovered with no problem. Toro Rosso in the pit lane, for whom? It is for Pierre Gasly. Gasly pitting from P5. Tidy stop from the Toro Rosso guys. 4 off, 4 on, as quick as you like. He resumes the pit lane. One of the Renaults rejoins behind Gasly. That is Nico Hülkenberg. Esteban Ocon also in the pit lane. Hülkenberg coming out behind one of the Saubers, I believe. That is Charles Leclerc. Magnussen, Sirotkin, Leclerc all having a tussle of their own. Hülkenberg now has a front row seat to all of that. Fernando Alonso has rejoined behind Nico Hülkenberg in P14. Jonathan, yes, I agree. If they're going to make these guys run Halo, well then, bring us the high noses back. The high nose solution is the best solution for cars like these. You want to get as much air under the car as possible, and having the low nose there really impedes that flow underneath the front of the chassis. So if you must run Halo, then you have basically eliminated the problem of having anything intrude into the cockpit should a car get over top another. So bring high noses back. Sirotkin loses a position to Nico Hulkenberg. Sirotkin now running in P12, Hulkenberg in P11. Meanwhile, Gasly has overtaken Carlos Sainz, who makes a pit stop. Fernando Alonso going wheel-to-wheel now with Sirotkin. Should be no contest into turn 1. Sirotkin braking very late, but Alonso has the inside line, makes easy work of the Russian. I do have to say, it is somewhat difficult to tell the Sauber and the Williams cars apart from a distance. They look almost identical from the front. Replay of Fernando Alonso overtaking one of the Saubers. Can't quite identify it from that far out. I do believe that would be Charles Leclerc. And then in replay again, overtaking Sirotkin. Relative to the McLaren, the Williams seems to have a lot of brake temperature going on. From that shot, it was very visible, the front rotors glowing on Sirotkin's car. Not a hint of that on Alonso's car. Sky commentary saying that it was a simple loss of power for Daniel Ricciardo causing his retirement. That could mean any host of things. Christian, you're saying bring back Bridgestone. I agree. They made really great tires. And they can even go around the banking at Indianapolis. Meanwhile, the gap between Vettel and Bottas, P1 and 2, 2.267 seconds according to the TV graphics. It is 2.282 seconds according to live timing at this moment. Kimi Räikkönen 4.9 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas in P3. Lewis Hamilton maintains his position in P4. Brendan Hartley is a full 27.5 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. Sebastian Vettel going into the pit lane. Here we go, Ferrari. Valtteri Bottas inherits the lead momentarily. Mercedes in the pit lane, however, it was to dupe Ferrari. No Mercedes in the pits at this time that I can see. Good stop by the Ferrari boys. Let's see if we get a time on that pit stop. Haven't seen one. Lewis Hamilton inherits P3 at the moment. That is a long crawl down the pit lane for Sebastian Vettel. Ferrari, of course, having the second pit box, long distance under the limiter there. Sebastian Vettel now rejoins the racetrack in P4. However, Bottas, Räikkönen, and Hamilton all have a stop to make yet. Sebastian Vettel has gone on to the soft tires, working lap 19 of 57. He should be good to go to the end. Degradation doesn't seem to be too severe. We'll have to see how the times shake out between Bottas, Hamilton, and Räikkönen and Vettel. Bottas has 22 laps on his tires. Kimi Räikkönen with 22 laps on his tires as well as he dives into the pit lane. We'll see if the world feed picks up that Räikkönen pit stop. It well should. And here we go. Ferrari in the pit lane for Mr. Räikkönen. Looks like they have soft tires ready to go on to the second Ferrari. Räikkönen into the box, stopping on the marks. 4 off, 4 on, And released. Looks like a clean pit stop from Ferrari. And that characteristic smoke, again, coming out of the back of the SF71H. Raikkonen should be good to go to the end of the race. Sebastian Vettel regains his position relative to Raikkonen. Vettel now running P3. Raikkonen rejoins in P4. Empty racetrack ahead and behind. World Feed showing that replay of Mercedes in the pit lane for Vettel's stop. That must have been a decoy. Mercedes obviously not running quite the same strategy as Ferrari. We will see when either Bottas or Hamilton decide to pit. Bottas has remained in the lead for the moment. Hamilton is in P2. Bottas is on the super softs and Hamilton is on the softs. Obviously both men carrying those tires from the start of the race. We'll see who pits first. Mercedes in the pit lane, it is Bottas. Hamilton inherits the lead. That's a somewhat slow stop from the Mercedes guys, 3.8 seconds. Yes, I know it sounds pretentious to say that a 3.8 second pit stop for four wheels is kind of slow, but it is a little bit slow by Formula One standards. Bottas should resume in P3. He is between Bottas and Raikkonen at the moment. Hamilton is currently your leader on the pit stop rotation. Hamilton not setting the world alight with his lap time. Sebastian Vettel resets fastest lap of the race with a 1:34.696. Hamilton last time by a 1:35.978. Vettel is about 1.4 seconds faster per lap than Lewis Hamilton at this time. The gap between those two gentlemen is 7.4 seconds. They are not within the delta time at all to try and leapfrog each other. Vettel should easily resume the lead once Hamilton does pit. However, the question mark is when will Hamilton pit? He is on the soft tires, as is Sebastian Vettel. Hamilton's tires are 23 laps old. Vettel's tires are 2 laps old. Yes, Andy, Carlos Sainz currently classified in P13 according to timing and scoring. Sainz just recently overtook Sirotkin. It seems like the fastest and best driver that could possibly have been driving that Williams is going backwards. Another fastest lap, this time coming to us from Kimi Raikkonen, a 1:34.411. However, Raikkonen down in P4. He's 1.7 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. Is this a charge from Ferrari on Mercedes? We shall see. Bottas still bringing his tires up to temperature. He is running the medium compound. Raikkonen running the soft compound. Watching the relative times between Bottas and Raikkonen, Bottas goes purple in Sector 1 with a 29.924. Raikkonen, personal best Sector 1, 30.078. Personal best for Bottas in Sector 2, 40.676. Raikkonen follows that up with a 40.942. Waiting for the Sector 3 loop to be completed. Bottas now sets fastest lap a 1:33.740. Raikkonen responds with a personal best 1:34.337. Yes, I believe we may have to start playing a game here. How many drivers can overtake Sergei Sirotkin? Charles Leclerc has now passed him. Leclerc also on the slower tires. Leclerc running the mediums, Sirotkin running the softs. Leclerc classified now ahead of Sirotkin. Brendan Hartley will be the next driver to attack the Russian. The interval at this time between Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel, 3.8 seconds. Hamilton has yet to pit, however. He's staying out longer than anybody else. He's got 25 laps under his tires now. Of course, that's also counting the distance of the formation lap. Hamilton running about a second and a half per lap slower, however, than Sebastian Vettel. Vettel last time by a 34.661. Hamilton a 36.046. Hamilton must be stopping very soon. He's losing too much time now. Sirotkin in the pits. He's now been overtaken by everybody else. On the medium tires now, good to go to the end of the race. Speaking thereof, we are approaching half distance. Marcus Ericsson pits in from P9. We'll see where he resumes. Marcus Ericsson making his first and presumably only pit stop. Ericsson into the box. Going on to the medium tire, some sparks coming up from the wheel nut there as the right front wheel man got the gun onto the nut there. Ericsson resumes. Looks like he resumes in P15. There's the official time from Sky Sports. The pit lane delta here is about 23 seconds. The gap between Hamilton and Vettel right now is 0.961. Andy, yes, good observation. I've noticed that myself. Commercials have not been an issue this time. I don't believe that terrestrial US coverage has gone to commercial once in this race so far. That is very encouraging. Vettel now really getting onto the gearbox of Lewis Hamilton. Remember, Hamilton has yet to stop. Vettel, his tires are only 6 laps old. The Ferrari should make easy work of the Mercedes. We'll see how much grip Hamilton has remaining in those tires. They're running on the same compound, softs to each man, but Hamilton's tires have done the entire race distance so far. Vettel goes for it at the end of Sector 2 in the DRS zone. He can't make it work. However, he's got the inside line. He'll then go to the outside line, coming down the penultimate straight there in Sector 3, though. Perhaps Vettel will have some slipstream advantage, and of course he will have DRS down start-finish. Expecting fireworks into Turn 1 unless Lewis Hamilton dives into the pits, which I do believe he will do, considering how much time he has lost. Hamilton not in a position to challenge for this win. Hamilton does not dive for the pit lane. This is very interesting. What are Mercedes doing here, keeping him out so long? He's clearly at a disadvantage. Vettel on DRS coming down into Turn 1. Hamilton tries to respond, but he has nothing for the Ferrari. Sebastian Vettel retakes the lead of the Bahrain Grand Prix on lap 26. And here is the difference there between the Mercedes and the Ferrari at this moment. Sebastian Vettel, Sector 1, 29.933. Lewis Hamilton, Sector 1, 31.4 dead. Mercedes potentially trying to cover a second Ferrari pit stop. We'll see if that transpires. The soft tires, obviously, they can last a long time. Hamilton is proving that as we speak. 28 laps now on those soft compounds. Sebastian Vettel only 7 laps on the softs. Mercedes coming into the pit lane with medium compound tires in hand. One must presume that this is for Lewis Hamilton, and indeed it is. Hamilton now jinking for the pit lane. Now, with Hamilton on mediums and Vettel on softs, we'll see what the relative performance is. Hamilton will definitely be good to go to the end of the race. Ferrari can try to make it to the end of the race on the softs. However, it will be very close. It's all going to be dependent on the degradation and whether or not Vettel or Raikkonen can keep their tires clean. We'll see how that transpires. Lewis Hamilton, currently classified P4, rejoining from the pit lane. He will retain his 4th place. Hamilton, however, critically good to go to the end of the race. Let's watch Lewis Hamilton coming up to speed here. Sector 1, 50.4 seconds. Obviously, that is due to the pit stop, not representative of the pace of that Mercedes in this trim. Yellow flag briefly in Sector 2. It's since been stubbed down. Perhaps that was for debris on the circuit, something like that. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz makes a pit stop from P16. Slow motion shots of Sebastian Vettel. His tires look absolutely fine right now. They're 9 laps old. The Ferrari also looking very good under the lights. I can see no damage going on. Thumbs up from Jacques Clear on the pit wall for Ferrari. At the front, it is Vettel leading Valtteri Bottas. The gap is 5.3 seconds at the moment. Vettel on the soft compound tires, Bottas on the medium compound tires. Are Ferrari good to go to the end of the race? They could be. We'll see what happens with any potential second pit stops for the Ferrari boys. Mercedes clearly on a one-stop strategy. Kevin Magnussen in the pits for Haas. Jonathan, you're hearing from French television that Hamilton may have a gearbox problem. Any more information? Meanwhile, Magnussen in the pit lane, another clean pit stop by Haas. Thumbs up all around from the Haas boys. They're happy about that. A very large piece of something coming off of one of the cars coming down into turn 1. I saw it tumbling through the grass there on the approach to turn 1 right before the brake boards come in. What was that? We need to see a replay down start-finish just then. There was a very large black piece of something, which I presume came off of a car. Couldn't identify whatever the component was, but it was solid. It was not a plastic bag. It was tumbling through the air. It wasn't deforming or flapping around. It looked to be a piece of carbon from a race car, a very sizable chunk of something. It seemed to be quite heavy. We need a replay. Jonathan, I wouldn't say that would be a pit board, because in order for a pit board to end up all the way down by turn 1, it would have had to have been hit by somebody as they came past the pits, and that would have been a major incident. Meanwhile, Van Dorn in the pit lane from P10 for McLaren. Ericsson and Perez fighting for position into turn 1. Perez has it, Ericsson wants it, and Ericsson now gets it. In replay, what happens here? Watch the approach to turn 1. Something comes off of the Haas of Romain Grosjean. Comes off at very high speed. It's an L-shaped piece of something. Let's see. On board with Grosjean. Lots of vibrations from the rear wing. Something comes off of Romain Grosjean's car. I cannot identify from where it came. It's a piece of the floor. The left front edge of the floor on Grosjean's car is loose. It is hanging loose from the left side of that Haas. Will we see a black and orange flag displayed with the number 8? We shall see, but the leading edge of the left side of the floor on that Haas car is flapping about wildly now. Grosjean undoubtedly will be feeling that as he's going along. It was a very large L-shaped piece of carbon coming off of that Haas. Grosjean and Magnussen having a little bit of a tussle in turn 1. Yeah, definitely watching the Haas team very closely now. Obviously, things are not well. Yes, the floor of that Haas is bouncing around there. Magnussen radio. Magnussen radio, cover your ears if you're underage. He says, what the fuck is he doing? Yona, that's a good point. If Grosjean retires, yeah, that means Ericsson will be in P10. And obviously he'd be on for a championship point. Ferrari B team and Ferrari C team, conspiracy theorists, go for it. Magnussen continuing to spew some blue language there through the team radio. He's obviously not happy with what his teammate did there in turn 1. Grosjean dives into the pits. We'll see what Haas do to mitigate that damage. It would be so easy to dislodge a barge board on one of these Formula 1 cars. You get over the high side of the curbing there, you go a little bit wide through basically any corner, and you just start to bottom the car, and if you just catch it a little bit wrong there on the edge of the curb, you can definitely do a lot of damage. Haas putting the super soft compound on Grosjean's car. They hold him very briefly after the wheels are on. However, they do not appear to take any sort of steps to repair that damage. Perhaps there's just not much they can do about it at the moment. To repair the floor on one of these Formula 1 cars, it's not something that can be done quickly. It's not something like in NASCAR where if you got a body panel hanging off, you can just stick some tape on it and the driver's good to go. These floor components, they're all molded carbon components and they're all in one piece. So if you want to repair the floor, you basically have to replace it, and it's a job that takes several hours. Meanwhile, working lap 32 of 57, Sebastian Vettel continues to lead the race. 4.2 seconds behind is Valtteri Bottas. 1.5 seconds behind Bottas is Kimi Räikkönen in the second Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton maintains P4, 16.2 seconds behind Kimi Räikkönen. Magnussen and Ocon going into turn 1. Magnussen has DRS, Ocon does not. Easy work for the Dane. perhaps that'll get Magnussen to calm down a little bit. He's now running a cool P8. Ahead of him is Fernando Alonso to the tune of 4 seconds. Interview with Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo simply says it's a loss of power which caused his retirement, and now he's just talking about what a dejected feeling it is to be anticipating all day starting the race and then to be out of it so soon. Vettel definitely is in a position to win this race. It depends on whether Ferrari are planning on making a second stop. It's really up in the air. I think they could be good to go on the soft compound tires. However, Mercedes on the mediums, obviously they pitted a little bit later than Ferrari did, and they went for the mediums. Ferrari running on the softs, can they make them last to the end of the race, and can they keep them competitive to the end of the race? Certainly, you could make the softs do the entire race distance if you want, but you couldn't run all out. We'll definitely see what happens. Meanwhile, Perez pits in, and he resumes on the super soft tires, now running P16. He's the last car on the lead lap. Both of the Williams cars of Sirotkin and Stroll have been lapped. World feed picking up Lewis Hamilton once again, having a very quiet day. Lewis Hamilton discussing strategy with the Mercedes pit wall. They're still comparing his time to Sebastian Vettel's. Their code speak is 1.3 unsafe. I'm assuming that means, should the Ferrari come in, Hamilton has 1.3 seconds in hand when Vettel rejoins the racetrack. Yes, Hamilton definitely on an off day, starting P9 from an unscheduled gearbox change, holding a cool 4th place in this race, and he's still very much in contention for a podium. Sebastian Vettel making his way past some of the back markers. That is Carlos Sainz, I believe. And yes, I am noticing out of the backs of all of the Ferrari-powered cars, there is some fluid and or smoke that is constantly visible when they're on throttle. I have to assume that is normal. Again, that is probably just some oil being discharged from the breather. In replay, this is Grosjean. Yes, Grosjean and Leclerc, and now Leclerc and Sainz in replay. Sainz taking Leclerc there. Ferrari in the pit lane. Looks like they've got medium compound tires out. And we have a Ferrari in the pits. It is Raikkonen. This confirms Ferrari running a two-stop strategy. Raikkonen coming off of the soft compound tires and onto, no, it is the super soft compound. Whoa, incident in the Ferrari pit stop. Left rear wheel changer has been run over. Raikkonen stopped in the pit lane. We have an injured mechanic in the Ferrari pits. Raikkonen has stopped in the pit lane. Left front brake on fire. They're going to have to run down the pit lane and get Raikkonen. You're not allowed to reverse in the pit lane. Ferrari mechanic's going to have to run in Kimi's direction. No, Kimi climbing out of the Ferrari. The brakes are properly on fire. We have an injured mechanic. Raikkonen out of the race. We do have a mechanic down in the Ferrari pit box. Raikkonen not at all looking happy. Understandably so. He's making his way toward the Ferrari pit box. All the pit lane now turned in the direction of Ferrari. Apparently we do have a somewhat serious situation now in the Ferrari pit lane regarding the mechanic who was hit. It appeared that the left rear wheel never came off of Raikkonen's car. I believe I still saw a soft compound tire on the left rear, and the rest of the tires obviously have been changed to the super soft compound. We need a replay of that stop. The camera is not really wanting to show what's going on in the Ferrari pit box. The rest of the Ferrari team have now retrieved Raikkonen's car and they're pushing it back in the garage. That mechanic is still down in the pit box. He is down in the pit lane. Looks like a medical team is now has now made their way over, and they appear to be placing the mechanic on a stretcher. I was correct. They did not get that soft tire off of the left rear of Raikkonen's car. Sebastian Vettel now can't make a pit stop even if he wanted to. His pit box is not clear. There are medical personnel in that pit box. Ferrari in trouble in more ways than one. At least two ways, perhaps more. Vettel now stuck out on the tires that he's on. There is still commotion down in the Ferrari pit box. They still have a guy on the ground, from what I can see. The TV camera's not wanting to show what's happening there. We do hope that everything is okay in the long run with that mechanic. It did look like two men went down when Raikkonen dropped the hammer. One mechanic definitely was run over by Raikkonen's car. Sebastian Vettel's lap times, meanwhile, are still faster than those immediately behind. His last time by was 134.591. Valtteri Bottas last time by 135.235. The gap is 5.8 seconds. Lewis Hamilton 14 seconds behind his teammate in P3. Hülkenberg now inherits P4, 42 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton, purple in Sector 1, 29.751. He's the only man lapping in the 29s in Sector 1. If Ferrari cannot get Sebastian Vettel serviced within the next couple of laps, it's going to have to be a one-stop, and Valtteri Bottas all of a sudden is going to be in the pound seat Let's see a replay of this pit stop for Kimi Räikkönen. Mechanic definitely run over there on the left rear. They never got the wheel off. Stewards are investigating Ferrari for an unsafe release on that pit stop. That is not at all surprising. Ferrari officially have told Sebastian Vettel it is now Plan B. I presume that means it is a one-stop strategy. Not an ideal one-stop strategy, running on the soft compound tires. Yes, they are the faster tires, but they are the less durable tires. Mercedes now running both cars on the mediums, easily good to go to the end. Vettel's going to have to nurse those tires to get to the end. Lewis Hamilton having radio issues. The pit's having a little trouble understanding him. The transmission from pit to car is clear enough. They're telling him attack mode 2, whatever that means. That's a good question, Jonathan. Is Vettel aware of the accident? It did not appear, at least from the transmission that was broadcast, that they told Vettel exactly what happened. They told that Kimi is out of the race. They did not say why. Somewhat limited, I guess, what you'd want a driver to know in a situation like that. We clearly have a mechanic injured, and of course you don't want to distract the driver with any thoughts that he doesn't need to be having at the moment. I would assume that Vettel has good working relationships at very least with everybody on the team, and I guess you wouldn't want to distract the driver with emotions in a moment like that. Alonso in the pits onto the super softs. We now have a yellow flag displayed in Sector 2. We've yet to see why. Yellow flag in Sector 2 has been subbed down. Fernando Alonso resumes in P8. Decent day for the Spaniard. Pierre Gasly, meanwhile, in the Honda-powered Toro Rosso, is in P4. Lewis Hamilton in third place, 11 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas, who is himself 7.5 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel, now in the sole Ferrari. Mercedes telling Hamilton that he needs to target low 34s in terms of lap time, and that's exactly what he's doing. His last time by was a 134.191. That's a low 34. Again, that car to pit radio from Hamilton to Mercedes, it is a little bit garbled. Seems like the microphone is a bit out of place. Having a little trouble understanding Lewis. Stoffel Van Dorn has now gone a lap down. Last car on the lead lap at this time is Fernando Alonso in P8. Van Dorn in P9. That is a good observation. Marcus Ericsson in the Ferrari-powered Sauber is in P6, on for a good points haul for the little team from Switzerland. Kevin Magnussen ahead of him in P5 in the highest place Haas car. Romain Grosjean running one spot out of the points in P11. Hamilton should get on Instagram and start talking to his team that way. That would work. Hulkenberg and Ericsson going at it down the start-finish straight. This is for P6. Ericsson has it, Hulkenberg wants it, and Hulkenberg gets it. Ericsson down to P7. Mercedes have just told Hamilton that Vettel may not stop again. Certainly, I would agree with that assessment. I'm not sure Ferrari could actually complete a pit stop right now. They're down at least one team member, and it's a very important team member. It is your left rear wheel gun man. I don't know if they have somebody who could substitute for him should Vettel need to come in. Big lockup there for Pierre Gasly in P4. I beg your pardon, that was Brendan Hartley. Hartley running in P10, your last points runner at the moment. Valtteri Bottas also with a big lockup heading into Sector 2. One of those two-stage lockups, couple of different flat spots now on that left front wheel. Mercedes crunching the numbers intently on the pit wall. They could theoretically be in a position to win this race. The gap is 8.1 seconds now between Vettel and Bottas. Hamilton running P3, two Mercedes on the podium right now. Can Vettel take those tires to the end without losing the lead? That is the question that remains to be answered here. Ferrari quite clearly not making another pit stop, and another piece of debris now coming off of Romain Grosjean's car. At least I believe that's where it came from. A smaller carbon component clearly coming off of Grosjean's car. Not sure if it was a piece of debris that was already on the racetrack, but I did see it flying up behind Grosjean's car. Whether he hit something that was already down or it came off of the car at that moment is unclear, but there are pieces coming off of Haas's this afternoon. In replay, watching Grosjean's car, yes, very clearly something came off of that Haas yet again. That's the second large piece of debris we have seen come off of Grosjean's car this afternoon. Checking to see, now from the live shots, if we get one, can we see any more damage on that Haas? Grosjean now up into P10, last points runner at the moment. He overtook Carlos Sainz for that position. We're now seeing Alonso on Ericsson for P8. Alonso has not taken that position. Ericsson maintains it through turns 1 and 2. Alonso will be coming back through turn 3. Alonso going to the outside, up the top of the hill. Can he make it stick? Yes, easy work. Ericsson loses P8 to Fernando Alonso. Another garbled radio transmission from Lewis Hamilton to Mercedes. Mercedes can't hear him at all. I believe he was asking if he's on target. I couldn't quite make out what he was saying there. Again, lots of wind noise coming from that Mercedes microphone. Watching Romain Grosjean down start-finish once again. It's behind Nico Hülkenberg now. He's fighting with one of the Force Indias. That is Sergio Perez. And Esteban Ocon running nose to tail. Trying to get a decent look at the left side of that Haas, a little bit too far away from that camera angle, but there are some very large pieces missing from that race car. On board now with Grosjean, I can see nothing out of place from this angle. Lewis Hamilton coming to lap Perez there. Got balked a little bit. I'm amazed that Grosjean is still running where he is. Yes, he's down in P12, but there are some very large pieces of that race car that have been left on the side of the road there heading into turn 1. It's interesting to see that these pieces are coming off at the end of the start-finish straight. That's where the cars are hitting top speed, and obviously that's where all of your downforce generating components would be under maximum load. Have Haas had some design errors there with their aero components? It is somewhat intriguing at this time. Grosjean slows down a lot to let Hamilton by. Hamilton takes that position, lapping Romain Grosjean. Grosjean diving into the pit lane now. Is this going to be a retirement from Haas? I do have that suspicion. We need some shots from the pit lane. Haas in for a pit stop very late here. They're still getting the tire blankets off of the super softs. I presume they're going to put Grosjean on the super softs. Definitely looking a little bit harried getting into the pit lane. Grosjean overshoots his marks a little bit coming in. Haas put the super soft tires on. They hold him a bit long, but then they release him again. Good indications from all the Haas men. Again, they must be aware of all the damage there, but there's not much they can do about it right now. Ten laps to go here in this 2018 Bahrain Grand Prix. In replay, Grosjean's pit stop, he does overshoot his marks a little bit. Everybody has to shuffle their position. A little bit of a hold there. Looked to be on the left rear. And in replay, you can see all that smoke coming out of the exhaust of that Ferrari engine Haas. Haas radio to Grosjean. The left-hand side barge board is underneath the car. Apparently they were able to make a quick damage assessment at very least in the pit stop. They made no attempt to either to free any of those stuck components or to make any repairs. Again, repairs not something easily done on a Formula 1 car in a pit stop. However, they are aware of it. The gap at the sharp end. Sebastian Vettel leads Valtteri Bottas by 5.9 seconds. That gap is decreasing relative between Vettel and Bottas. However, 9 laps to go. Is 9 laps enough time to make up 6 seconds? We're going to find out. Bottas running on the medium compound tires, 27 laps old at this point. Vettel running on the soft compound tires, 29 laps old. Sebastian Vettel on the radio asking where the blue flags are. Some things never change. World feed has picked up Sebastian Vettel yet again. He doesn't seem to be too harried there, even though these tires are old at this point. The gap has now shrunk to 5.4 seconds. 8 laps to go. Vettel just driving very deliberately now. He's not making any gross inputs with the steering wheel. His inputs are all very smooth. Hamilton radio. Mercedes telling Hamilton, keep your head down. Vettel is going to fall off of that tire curve. They are definitely anticipating Vettel to have problems bringing this car home in these closing laps of the race. Vettel's still doing pretty well. His lap time last time by was a 1:35.266. Compare that to Valtteri Bottas, a 1:34.733. Again, 5.4 seconds is the gap between Vettel and Bottas for P1 and 2. Hamilton's last lap, a 1:35.012. He's 12 seconds down the road from his teammate. On board with Hamilton. What are we seeing here? A little bit of a lockup there. Therefore pushing him slightly wide, coming down into the infield. Slow speed lockup. No real damage to that tire. Medium compound anyway, so they can take a little bit of punishment. Bottas holding station relative to Vettel. The gap last time by over the line was 5.3 seconds. Watching Van Dorn and Ericsson. This is the scrap for P8. Ericsson has it. Van Dorn wants it. Ericsson still firmly in the points here. The gap between Vettel and Bottas has now come down rather significantly. It was 4.6 seconds the last time the TV graphics showed it. Live timing now showing, yes, 4.646 is the gap between Vettel and Bottas across the line there, beginning lap 51 of 57. Yes, SimRacing604, I agree with your calculations. About 7 tenths per lap is Bottas gaining on Vettel. That does put them right nose to tail with about 3 laps to go. If Bottas's tires are a bit healthier than Vettel's, and as I presume they will be, there could well be a scrap for the win here. Zach Brown standing in the McLaren garage, not looking particularly enthusiastic about anything. However, Fernando Alonso running P7, that's not a bad day. Van Dorn in P9, not a bad day there either. Van Dorn could well overtake Ericsson momentarily. Just 0.6 of a second between those two men. Kevin, I agree with that as well. Vettel definitely running conservatively. The question is, how much does he still have in the bag? His tires are 32 laps old. Bottas's tires are 30 laps old, but Bottas is on the more durable medium compound. Vettel on the less durable soft compound. Faster in the beginning, but now they are a liability. Hamilton radio. Hamilton joining the blue flag complaint parade. He was complaining about blue flags not being displayed for Carlos Sainz. Sainz has since given him the position. The gap between Vettel and Bottas now, beginning lap 52, 3.7 seconds. Bottas consistently gaining. He gained 9/10 on that last lap. Vettel running slightly wide there through turn 5. Vettel is falling off the cliff in terms of what his tires can do. We only have a handful of laps remaining, but Bottas and Vettel are now in the same camera shot. It is 3.277. Mercedes telling Bottas there will be no more lapped cars in your way. Push to close it is what they said. It is now on between Sebastian Vettel and Valtteri Bottas, working lap 52 of 57 of this Bahrain Grand Prix. The gap is now 2.953. All of the camera shots picking up Sebastian Vettel are now picking up Valtteri Bottas in the same frame. It is on. 5 laps to go. Lewis Hamilton not a factor in this ending fight here. He's 11.3 seconds behind the leader. He's 14 seconds, I beg your pardon, behind Sebastian Vettel. He's 11.3 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. Hamilton is nowhere in the closing stages of this race. He's on for a podium, yes, ahead of Pierre Gasly. However, this is between Sebastian Vettel and Valtteri Bottas. Mercedes pit board to Valtteri Bottas. 2.8 seconds is the gap according to Mercedes, and that is the gap according to timing and scoring right now. 2.887 is the live interval between Vettel and Bottas for the win. Working lap 53 of 57. This is all getting pretty tense. Sebastian Vettel visibly nursing that Ferrari through the final corner, the tail end just squirreling about a little bit as he very carefully gets on the throttle. Down start finish, both cars now running line astern. They have 1.7 seconds between them, working lap 54 of 57. This is not over. Christian, the plan that Ferrari had, I presume, would have been to put Vettel on the medium tires or perhaps another set of soft tires. However, they were going for a two-stop strategy when they brought Raikkonen in on what was probably going to be the lap before they brought Vettel in. They had a problem in the pit stop, and one of their men was run over by Kimi Raikkonen, and therefore Ferrari no longer able to service Vettel. The gap now 1.2 seconds between Vettel and Bottas. Bottas needs just 0.2 of a second to get into DRS range down the start-finish straight. Vettel is trying his best. He is showing the field a masterclass on how to drive a car on old tires. However, Bottas has the healthier tires. He has the better tire to be on right now. He's still torturing his left front with lockups into the infield. Can Bottas make a move on Sebastian Vettel? He could well have DRS assistance down the start-finish straight, passing the activation line. What was the gap? 1.3 seconds. He's not close enough for DRS assistance this time by. Lap 55, meanwhile, begins. Lap time, Sebastian Vettel last time by, that was a 135.778. Bottas last time by a 135.428. The gap remains 1.354. 14 kilometers left to go in this race. 2 laps to go in this race. 1.2 seconds is the live interval between Vettel and Bottas. on board with Vettel, looking rearward. I can see his rear tires. Definitely, you can see where that tread surface links up with the sidewall. These tires are well worn in. 1.1 seconds is the live gap now. Vettel and Bottas for the win. Can Bottas stay within that DRS range? He only needs 1/10 of a second to get DRS assistance down the start-finish straight. Can he get there? The gap is now just over 1 second exactly. Watching that live trace, 1.016 is the gap now between Vettel and Bottas. 1.039 is the gap. Second by second it is changing. Bottas could well get DRS assistance now to begin the penultimate lap, 56 of 57. The gap is now below 1 second. If Bottas can stay here to the DRS activation line, he will get DRS down the start-finish straight, and then it is all for naught for Sebastian Vettel. Where is the activation zone, and what is the gap? The gap is below 1 second. Bottas will get DRS down start-finish. Bottas not using DRS down start-finish. What was that gap at the activation line? It was below 1 second at last update. The gap now down to just 0.5 seconds between Vettel and Bottas. 2 laps to go in this Bahrain Grand Prix. Bottas not getting DRS assistance last time by down start-finish. He's going to have to do it all on track without any help. Vettel's tires are very old, 37 laps old on those soft compound tires. Bottas's tires, 35 laps old, but they are the mediums, and they're in better shape at this point than the tires of Sebastian Vettel. Niki Lauda looking on in a rather stressful guise, I must say. Bottas and Vettel both being very careful into the infield. Neither man wanting to lock up that left front as it's so easy to do. Bottas with DRS down the infield straight. How close can he get to the Ferrari? Not close enough, it would appear. Vettel entering Sector 3, still ahead of Valtteri Bottas. The gap, just counting it in my head here, is about half a second still. Bottas will surely get DRS down start finish, beginning the final lap of this race. Will we see a pass for the win on the last lap? It certainly is shaping up to be so. Bottas tucking into the slipstream of Sebastian Vettel, down the penultimate straight, through the right-hander, down to start-finish. 1 lap to go for the 2018 Bahrain Grand Prix. Will it be Sebastian Vettel? Will it be Valtteri Bottas? Bottas has DRS, down start-finish on the Ferrari. Vettel is helpless to do anything against that advantage. Vettel parks it in the middle. Bottas going for the move. He cannot do it into turn 1. Vettel very smartly closed down the middle of the racetrack, went defensive, and he maintains the lead through turns 1 and 2. Coming up into turn 3, what can happen at the top of the hill? Bottas wants that win. Vettel has that win in the bag for the moment. The Ferrari maintains position through turn 3, now coming through the end of Sector 1 into Sector 2, through the twisty stuff in the infield. What can Sebastian Vettel do to fend off Valtteri Bottas? The distance to the line is ticking down second by second. Coming into the infield now through the long, slow right-hander. Vettel maintains his lead over Valtteri Bottas. Bottas is now just 8/10 behind Sebastian Vettel as they head down to the infield straight. Bottas will have DRS again on the Ferrari. Big lockup by Valtteri Bottas coming down into the infield. Bottas opens DRS. He is gaining all the time on the Ferrari. However, he does not have enough real estate to make a move happen. The gap is 0.9 of a second. Coming up through the long left-hander, followed through the long right-hander now to complete Sector 2. Vettel still in the lead. Valtteri Bottas 0.8 behind Sebastian Vettel. 2 straights to go. Sebastian Vettel coming up to lap, I believe that is Fernando Alonso, letting that battle through quite wisely. Coming down to the final corner. This is Bottas' last opportunity. I do believe he's closer than he has been. However, Vettel on the power to the line. The checkered flag is up. Sebastian Vettel wins the Bahrain Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas behind. The final interval, 0.760. Gerhard Berger waving the checkered flag, bringing Sebastian Vettel home. Victory in sordid circumstances for Ferrari and for Sebastian Vettel. An absolute masterclass of how to save your tires. 39 laps on the soft compound for Sebastian Vettel. He was never meant to do that. However, he brings home the win, the second in succession in 2018 for Ferrari. waiting for the rest of the field to cross the line and for timing and scoring to neutralize everybody. Sebastian Vettel on the radio saying these tires were done. They were done for the last 10 laps. Grazie davvero, he says. Thank you, truly, he says to the team. Incredible drive by Sebastian Vettel. I dare say that this was the best drive of Sebastian Vettel's career. One-stop strategy which he was not planning on, however he made it work. Timing and scoring has now neutralized. As they cross the line, the final order of the 2018 Bahrain Grand Prix is as follows. Winning the race for Ferrari, car number 5, Sebastian Vettel. P2, Valtteri Bottas for Mercedes. P3, Lewis Hamilton, also of Mercedes. P4, Pierre Gasly, a career best finish for him, the Honda-powered Toro Rosso. P4, lots of points for him. P5, Kevin Magnussen for Haas. P6, Nico Hülkenberg in the first of the Renaults. P7, Fernando Alonso, followed immediately in P8 by his teammate Stoffel Vandoorne. A decent recovery by McLaren after a disappointing day on Saturday. P9, Marcus Ericsson for Sauber. Nice points for him and for the team. Esteban Ocon, your last point scorer in P10 for Force India. P11, Carlos Sainz in the second Renault. P12, the second Force India of Sergio Perez. P13, Brendan Hartley in the second Toro Rosso. P14, Charles Leclerc in the second Sauber. P15, Romain Grosjean, with not all of his Haas making it to the line. He manages to finish the race nonetheless. P16, Lance Stroll in the Williams, and P17, your last car to finish the race, Sergei Sirotkin in the second Williams. Out of this race are Kimi Räikkönen, Max Verstappen, and Daniel Ricciardo. Kimi Räikkönen retired after a balked pit stop. Verstappen retired after a puncture and then later a mechanical problem. Daniel Ricciardo retiring with a mechanical problem. The top 3 finishers have now stopped in Parc Fermé, where everyone is waiting to greet winner Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian Vettel being greeted by jubilation from the Ferrari team. A somewhat subdued celebration, I must note, from Ferrari. Surely their thoughts are with their stricken man. Sebastian Vettel undoubtedly earned this win. Again, I will say that this was the finest drive of Sebastian Vettel's career. Bottas giving congratulations to Sebastian Vettel. That was a good effort from Bottas, but he just did not have it when it counted. Lewis Hamilton also, of course, parking up next to the Ferrari. Haven't seen Hamilton in Parc Fermé. Yes, Mike, it seems pretty clear that Vettel doesn't know exactly what happened in that pit stop. Toro Rosso definitely looking pretty happy. P4, that is a good day for that team. Also, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that is the highest finish for a Honda engine since they returned to Formula One in 2015. Just listening to Vettel and Bottas there in the prep room. Vettel once again saying 10 laps to go. I thought they were done. What happened to Raikkonen? He made a pit stop, and Ferrari, they made a mistake on the left rear wheel, and they couldn't get the left rear wheel off. Raikkonen was released back into the pit lane. At least one of his mechanics was run over when Raikkonen took off back into the pit lane. They didn't get his left rear wheel on, therefore they stopped the car. Raikkonen retired, and we're still waiting on the status of the Ferrari mechanic or mechanics. I saw 2 men go down in that stop. One of them has been injured. I'm not entirely sure how severely. Definitely leg injuries of some kind, but we're waiting any official word. SimRacing604, thank you very much for joining us today. Always a pleasure to have you here. Toro Rosso guys, you would think they just won the race. They've all spilled out into the pit lane and they're all jumping around happy. The long and short of the Raikkonen problem was Ferrari were on for a 2-stop strategy. They were trying to fit the soft compound tires again, I believe, to Raikkonen's car. However, they were not able to get that left rear wheel off of the car. They released Raikkonen prematurely, and that caused the incident. Ferrari down at least one mechanic, therefore they were not able to support a pit stop for Sebastian Vettel, who had to change his strategy for a 1-stop on tires that he was never supposed to be on for that long. However, he managed to hold it out until the end and take the win nonetheless. Brilliant drive from Sebastian Vettel. And now the podium ceremony. A jubilant Sebastian Vettel on the podium. Undoubtedly, they've not yet told him of the incident in the pit lane. However, stand by for the Italian and German national anthems. The 2 national anthems that we've heard more often than any others on a Formula One podium, the German and Italian. Of course, Ferrari, in the days of Michael Schumacher, that played 91 times, at least in Michael Schumacher's career, first with Benetton and later with Ferrari. Lots of subdued faces from the Ferrari crew. I certainly do hope that we're not anticipating really bad news from that Ferrari pit stop. Again, it did appear that 2 men went down in that stop. One was definitely run over by Raikkonen's car. I would assume there'd be leg injuries of some sort. However, there was medical activity in the Ferrari pit box for quite some time. The cameras cut away from it, as they often do in a situation like that, generally is not a good sign, however, but we await any official word from Ferrari or from the FIA as to the condition of the Ferrari mechanics. Definitely a very hard day for the Ferrari team. They lost a car, and one man down at very least in the pit lane. Sebastian Vettel, though, looking very exhausted, I must say, but definitely very relieved to have finished that race where he did. Valtteri Bottas, if anything, looks slightly shell-shocked. That should have been a pretty academic affair for Bottas in the healthier car on the healthier tires, but it was not to be. Lewis Hamilton, damage control in P3. However, Sebastian Vettel now has 1-2 on the trot in 2018. We'll wait to hear from our podium finishers here. And with the podium interviews, David Coulthard. Sebastian Vettel said he got on the radio with about 10 laps to go and saying that he had everything under control. It was a lie. Yes, for the record, that is Sebastian Vettel's 49th race victory from his 200th start. Think about that. He's won basically 50 races from 200 starts. That's quite a record. DC asking Valtteri Bottas, do you have a message for Seb? You're going to get him next time, and Bottas basically has no message for Seb. I think he knows that that race was his for the taking, and he just couldn't do it. He had the better car and the better tires at the end. He just could not get it done, even with DRS assistance. DC with the stats question to Sebastian Vettel. You've got to go back to 1982, since we can say that the person who won the first two races of the year did not win the World Championship. Sebastian Vettel's quick response, well, they didn't have as many races in 1982. Yes, for the record, no mention of the incident in the Ferrari pit lane to Sebastian Vettel, at least not in the press conference. We will await any official word from the FIA or from Ferrari regarding that mechanic's condition. I've yet to see anything so far. American coverage has now cut away from the Bahrain Grand Prix. We did not get a single commercial interruption here in the United States during the broadcast. Hopefully that's a trend that continues. If we can't get a dedicated American commentary team, at very least we can get uncut race coverage. That's definitely very good. Undoubtedly, ESPN2 will now be showing 2.5 hours of straight commercials to make up for the lost revenue. But all in all, very good coverage, I must say, considering what it is from ESPN here in the United States. I definitely like the Sky Sports commentary team. Just having Martin Brundle in that commentary box, he offers very nice insights into what's going on, again, from that first-person, first-hand perspective. For our last couple of minutes here, I'll open it up for any questions here from the audience. Thank you to those of you who stuck around for the entire race. I definitely do enjoy doing these commentaries for you. Yes, Jonathan, being in Belgium, you have access, I'm sure, to French, German, Dutch, and English language broadcasters. Welcome to the linguistic mess that is that part of Europe. A completely self-serving question there from Yona. Who is your favorite Twitter follower? Well, maybe you would know. Sky, yes, they definitely do have a bias, obviously a very pro-British bias, and of course in recent years that has meant pro-Hamilton, but at the same time, the Brits, they love their motorsport, and they particularly love it when one of their own does very well in motorsports. I can hardly blame them. However, the bias does impact a bit on their coverage, especially in circumstances where you do need objectivity. However, I'm quite happy today that they chose to focus on what was actually happening on track rather than talking about every 5 seconds, can Hamilton win the race? Clearly he couldn't. Jonathan asking, any track days planned? Unfortunately, no. I've got no plans at this time to get back into a race car. I would very much like to do that, but at this point I don't have any plans to do so. Andy, 8802 Gator, you're asking, why is Honda a viable engine all of a sudden? I don't know. They have had 3 years to develop the thing, so at this point it should be a viable engine, but why they managed to finish 4th today in a Toro Rosso and they never really managed to do that in a McLaren, your guess is as good as mine. Were there other weaknesses in that McLaren package that just don't exist in the Toro Rosso? It's quite well possible, I would presume. The McLaren chassis over the last 2 years certainly has seemed to be pretty good, and we were led to believe that the weak link in that chain was Honda, but here today, you've got a Toro Rosso in P4, and you've got the McLarens in P7 and 8, the other Toro Rosso down there, Brendan Hartley, in P13, so out of the points, so double points for McLaren, single points finish for Toro Rosso, but they're on P4, McLaren P7. Is there a case to be made for Fernando Alonso being cursed? It's quite possible. If you look at his career, pretty much every move that he's ever made has been ill-timed or ill-thought or a combination of the two. His days with Renault by far were his best, winning 2 world championships in succession. His move to McLaren in 2007 should have been an inspired move. McLaren were the class of the field in 07, but he just could not get his mind around Lewis Hamilton and how the team really were in the tank for Hamilton. Meanwhile, they had the reigning world champion in the #1 car, and they didn't really support him the way that they ought have done. Perhaps had they done that, they wouldn't have gotten themselves so embroiled in the Spygate saga, and they would have won the championship that year, but they did not. His move back to Renault, also, I've got to say, ill-timed. He managed to win a couple races in 08, but Renault were really on the downturn back then. Moving to Ferrari for 2010, you could argue an inspired move, but he could not keep it together for a world championship. His best chance definitely was in 2010. Couldn't do it. Abu Dhabi in 2010, stuck behind Vitaly Petrov for most of the race. Lost the world championship that year, and then Ferrari began a downturn once again, leaving Ferrari for 2015 to go back to McLaren. We all know that mess. And now, still at McLaren 2018, they're being outclassed by their old engine supplier. Good thing you like to do this. You're good at it. Well, thank you very much for that. Where did Grosjean finish? Grosjean finished down in P15. Again, his car was literally falling to pieces for most of the day, so damage control for sure. P15 for Grosjean. His teammate Magnussen all the way up in P5. Yes, a decent day for Haas, all things considered. P5 for Magnussen. You could argue that Grosjean should have been up there as well, but whatever was going on with his car, I've got to believe that he had some sort of accident damage from earlier on in the race, because the other Haas didn't fall to pieces at the end of the start-finish straight like Grosjean's did. There must have been some sort of incident that we didn't quite pick up near the start of the race, but nonetheless, they get both cars to the finish. It's not a double retirement like they had last time out in Australia, so definitely improvements for the American team. They're definitely doing a good job with that car as well. Yes, Andy, if you are watching on American television, ESPN2 very abruptly has cut to a cheerleading competition. I know nothing about cheerleading, nor do I particularly care, so no, there will be no breakdown of that for those of you watching on terrestrial U.S. television. Driver of the day. Who was driver of the day? I don't actually know. I haven't checked. I would say that if I had to control it, Sebastian Vettel undoubtedly was driver of the day. That was just a brilliant display of keeping your tires under control for the entire second half of that race. A one-stop strategy on the wrong tires, basically. Unbelievable job. Again, that was the finest race I've ever seen Sebastian Vettel not only win, but just participate in. Absolutely fantastic. Perhaps the only one better was Monza 2008, where he took his first career victory. In any regard, though, I do have to thank you all very much for joining me today. My first live stream of the year for Formula One, round 2 of the 2018 World Championship. Sebastian Vettel with his second successive victory for Ferrari. We will see you next in Shanghai. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you soon.